What if the real battle in Outlander was never about armies or revolutions, but about the moment a father and son finally stop running from each other? Just as the war arrives at their doorstep, Episode 9 does not ease us into its story. It pulls us straight into the quiet tension that follows chaos, where every character feels the weight of what is coming, even before the first shot is fired. The air around Fraser's Ridge feels different now. It is heavier, almost as if the land itself understands that peace has already begun to slip away. This is not the kind of danger that announces itself loudly. It grows slowly, in silences, in glances, in the way people stop speaking when someone else enters the room. And at the center of it all stands Jamie Fraser, carrying a burden that no victory can erase. He is not standing on a battlefield when we first feel his presence. He is standing still, looking out over the ridge, trying to measure something that cannot be seen. Not the enemy, not the distance, but the cost. Because deep down, he already knows that whatever comes next will demand more than strategy or strength. It will demand sacrifice. His face remains calm, controlled, the same way it always has been in moments like this. But there is something different in his stillness now. A quiet exhaustion that comes not from fighting, but from never being able to stop. And without a single word spoken, we understand that this time, even he is unsure how much more he can carry. Watching him from a distance is Claire Fraser, and her silence speaks louder than any dialogue ever could. She knows him too well. She can see the cracks forming beneath that calm exterior, the emotional weight he refuses to show anyone else. Their connection has always been the heart of this story, but here it feels even more fragile. Not because their love is weakening, but because the world around them is becoming more dangerous than ever before. She does not interrupt him. She does not ask questions. She simply watches, already preparing herself for the moment when she will have to be his strength again. Back at the ridge, life continues, but it no longer feels normal. The absence of Fergus lingers like a shadow that no one can escape. Every corner of the settlement carries a reminder of loss, and no one feels it more deeply than Marsali Fraser. She is trying to hold everything together, not just for herself, but for her children. But there is a quiet shift happening inside her. Grief is no longer the only emotion she carries. There is anger now, a growing frustration with the constant sacrifices this family is forced to make. And for the first time, we begin to see that her strength is changing shape. It is no longer just about endurance. It is about questioning the cost of survival itself. This emotional tension spreads across the ridge, touching every character in subtle but powerful ways. Conversations feel shorter, smiles feel forced. Even moments of calm carry an undercurrent of fear. Because everyone knows that something is coming. They just do not know when or how devastating it will be. And that uncertainty becomes more dangerous than the enemy itself. Meanwhile, far from the emotional center of the ridge, William Ransom finds himself in a battle of a different kind. One that has nothing to do with weapons or war, and everything to do with identity. He is more isolated than ever, caught between truths he cannot fully accept, and emotions he does not know how to control. His distance from Lord John Grey has created a silence between them that feels heavier than any argument. And that silence begins to change him. Because when a man is left alone with his thoughts for too long, those thoughts can become louder than reality. William's anger has always been his shield, the one thing that keeps him from facing the truth about who he is. But in this episode, that shield begins to crack. Not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, in moments where he hesitates instead of reacting, where he listens instead of pushing back. And it is in those small changes that we begin to see the possibility of something new forming inside him. The tension between him and Lord John finally reaches a breaking point in a confrontation that is not loud, but deeply emotional. Words are exchanged, sharp and honest, but beneath those words is something far more important. Fear. The fear of losing each other. For the first time, Lord John allows his composure to slip, revealing frustration that has been building for far too long. And instead of responding with anger, William does something unexpected. He listens. Truly listens. And that moment, quiet as it may seem, becomes one of the most important turning points of the episode. At the same time, the outside world begins to press closer to the ridge. The revolution is no longer something happening at a distance. It is moving, shifting, closing in. News arrives, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet urgency that makes it even more unsettling. The kind of information that does not cause panic immediately, but plants a seed of fear that grows with every passing moment. When Jamie gathers his family and closest allies to share what he has learned, the atmosphere changes instantly. The room feels smaller, tighter, as if the walls themselves are closing in. No one interrupts. No one questions right away, because they can all feel it. This is not just another warning. This is the beginning of something much bigger. Claire understands it immediately. This is no longer about choosing sides or planning strategies. This is about survival. And for the first time, even the strongest among them begin to realize that Fraser's Ridge may not be the safe haven they believed it to be. And just as this realization begins to settle, the episode quietly shifts its focus to something even more powerful than war itself, the bonds that hold this family together. Because as fear grows, so does the need for connection. And nowhere is that more evident than in the evolving relationship between Jamie and William. They are not ready to face each other fully. Not yet. Too much has been left unsaid, too many emotions buried beneath pride and distance. But the foundation is beginning to change. The anger that once defined their connection is slowly giving way to something more complicated, something more honest. And as the episode moves forward, it becomes clear that their journey toward understanding each other will be just as important as the battle waiting outside. Because in a world where everything is about to fall apart, the most powerful thing they can do is finally stand together. At the center of this growing pressure is Jamie Fraser, who is no longer just a leader preparing for battle, but a man trying to hold together a community that is quietly starting to fracture under fear. For the first time, we see his authority being tested, not through rebellion, but through doubt. The people trust him, but fear has a way of making even the strongest faith feel fragile. And during a tense gathering where plans are discussed and risks are measured, that doubt finally surfaces. Voices begin to rise. Not in anger, but in desperation. Some believe they should prepare to defend the ridge at all costs. Others think leaving might be the only way to survive. And in that moment, it becomes clear that there is no perfect choice. Every path leads to loss in some form. Jamie listens to every opinion, his expression controlled, but inside, the weight of responsibility grows heavier. Because this is no longer about leading men into battle. This is about deciding who lives, who stays, and who might never see another sunrise. Watching this unfold is Claire Fraser, who understands something that others do not. War does not only destroy through violence. It destroys through fear, through division, through the quiet breaking of trust. She can see it happening in real time, the way people look at each other differently now, the way suspicion begins to replace unity. And she knows that if they lose that unity, the ridge will fall long before any army arrives. At the same time, a quiet but powerful transformation continues to grow within Marsali Fraser. Her grief has not disappeared, it never will, but it is no longer controlling her. Instead, it is shaping her into something stronger, something more determined. In a deeply emotional moment, she finally speaks openly about what she has been holding inside. Not just sadness, but anger. Not just loss, but exhaustion. The exhaustion of always being the ones who must endure, who must sacrifice, who must rebuild after everything falls apart. But what makes this moment powerful is not her pain, it is her decision. She refuses to let fear define her children's future. She refuses to let them grow up believing that survival means living in constant fear. And in that quiet declaration, we see a shift. She is no longer just reacting to tragedy. She is choosing who she will become because of it. And that choice begins to inspire those around her, even if they do not fully realize it yet. Meanwhile, far from the center of the ridge's leadership, William Ransom continues to face a battle that feels just as intense as the war approaching. But his conflict is internal, and that makes it even more dangerous. Because there is no clear enemy, no clear path forward, only questions that refuse to be ignored. After everything that has happened, after the distance he created between himself and Lord John Grey, William finds himself standing at a point where he can no longer rely on anger to guide him. For so long, his pride has protected him from facing the truth. But now, that pride feels heavier than ever. It no longer shields him, it isolates him. There is a powerful moment where he walks alone, away from everyone, away from the expectations and the noise, trying to understand who he really is. Not who he was told to be, not who others expect him to become, but who he chooses to be when everything is uncertain. And for the first time, we see hesitation in him, not weakness, but awareness. The realization that he does not have all the answers, and that maybe he does not need to. That realization begins to pull him back toward Lord John, even if he is not ready to admit it fully. Their connection has always been complex, built on unspoken emotions and complicated truths. But now, it is being tested in a way it never has before. Because distance has created space for something new to emerge: understanding. At the same time, the threat outside the ridge begins to take a more defined shape. Information spreads quietly, passed from one person to another, growing more concerning with every retelling. There are whispers of movement, of forces reorganizing, of plans that do not yet fully make sense, but feel dangerous all the same. And what makes it worse is the uncertainty surrounding it. No one knows exactly where the danger will strike. No one knows how prepared they truly are. This uncertainty begins to create something even more dangerous than the enemy itself: paranoia. People start questioning what they hear, what they see, even who they trust. Conversations become guarded, glances become suspicious. And slowly, the sense of safety that once defined Fraser's Ridge begins to disappear. In the midst of all this, Brianna Fraser and Roger Mackenzie step into roles that feel more important than ever before. They are no longer just trying to survive in a time that does not belong to them. They are becoming leaders in their own right. Brianna begins using her knowledge in ways that could change everything. Thinking ahead, strengthening defenses, finding solutions that others might not see. And Roger, who once struggled with uncertainty, begins to take control in a quiet but powerful way. He organizes. He prepares. He ensures that communication will not fail when it matters most. And in doing so, he shows a version of himself that is stronger, more confident, more certain than ever before. Together, they represent something the Ridge desperately needs: hope for the future, even in the face of overwhelming fear. But just as this fragile balance begins to form, the outside world makes its presence known in a way that cannot be ignored. It does not come as a full attack, not yet. It comes as a warning. In the darkness of night, when the Ridge should feel safest, the sound breaks through the silence. Horses, movement. Then shots fired, not aimed to kill, but to send a message. Panic spreads instantly. Lights appear in windows, doors open. People gather, unsure of what they are facing, but certain that something has changed. Jamie steps forward immediately, his calm authority cutting through the chaos. He does not raise his voice, but he does not need to. His presence alone brings order to the fear. He assesses, he commands, he reassures. And for a moment, it feels like control has been restored. But the truth is clear to everyone. This was not an attack. It was a message. Fraser's Ridge is no longer hidden. Fraser's Ridge is no longer safe. And as that realization settles over the community, one thing becomes certain. Whatever comes next will not wait for them to be ready. At the center of this rising storm is Jamie Fraser, who understands that waiting is no longer an option. The enemy has already made their move, not with force, but with intention. That changes everything. Because now, reacting is not enough. He must act first. But this decision is not simple. Every step forward carries risk. Every choice could protect the Ridge or expose it completely. There is a powerful shift in Jamie's presence here. He is still the same leader, still calm, still controlled, but there is a sharper edge to him now, a readiness to make harder decisions, even if those decisions come with consequences he cannot fully control. He begins organizing not just defenses, but movement, positioning people, preparing for outcomes that no one wants to speak aloud. And while others look to him for certainty, the truth is, he is operating on instinct as much as strategy. Because this is no longer a predictable war. Watching him closely is Claire Fraser, who feels the shift before anyone says it out loud. She knows this version of Jamie, the one who carries everything silently, who prepares for the worst while hoping for something better. And she also knows what it costs him. There is a quiet moment between them where no plans are discussed, no strategies shared, only emotion. Because sometimes understanding does not need words. Claire is facing her own kind of pressure as well. The ridge is no longer just at risk from outside forces. Inside, people are beginning to crack under fear. Injuries from small incidents increase. Anxiety turns into physical symptoms. And through all of it, she remains the one constant, steady, focused, refusing to let panic take control. But even she cannot ignore the truth anymore. If the ridge falls, it will not just be a loss of land. It will be the loss of everything they have built together. At the same time, the emotional core of the episode deepens through William Ransom, whose internal conflict finally reaches a point where it cannot be ignored any longer. The events of the night shake something inside him. The realization that danger is real, immediate, and unavoidable forces him to confront the one thing he has been running from: responsibility. For so long, William has tried to define himself through distance. Distance from truth. Distance from identity. Distance from the people who care about him. But now, distance feels like weakness. And for the first time, he begins to understand that standing alone is not strength, it is fear disguised as pride. This realization leads him back to Lord John Grey, whose situation has grown more complicated and more dangerous. Under suspicion, watched closely, treated as a possible threat rather than a trusted ally, Lord John remains composed, but the pressure is undeniable. Accusations are not spoken loudly, but they exist in every glance, every guarded interaction. And yet he refuses to defend himself in a way that would harm others. His loyalty remains intact, even when it would be easier to break. When William finally approaches him, the moment is not dramatic, but it is deeply emotional. There are no perfect words, no carefully constructed speeches, only honesty. And that honesty changes everything. William does not try to justify himself. He does not hide behind anger. He admits uncertainty. He admits confusion. And most importantly, he admits that he does not want to lose him. Lord John's response is quiet, but powerful. He does not demand anything. He does not remind William of past mistakes. Instead, he offers something far more meaningful: understanding. And in that moment, their relationship shifts. Not into something perfect, not into something fully healed, but into something real, something stronger than before. Meanwhile, the growing threat begins to reveal another layer, one that is even more dangerous than external attack. Suspicion of a traitor inside the ridge begins to spread. It starts as a whisper, a possibility. But as more inconsistencies appear, that possibility becomes harder to ignore. This changes the atmosphere completely. Because an enemy outside can be fought, but an enemy within can destroy everything before the first battle even begins. People begin to question small things: who knew what, who said what, who was present when certain decisions were made. Trust begins to weaken, not because anyone wants it to, but because fear demands answers even when there are none yet. And this tension begins to pull the community apart in subtle but dangerous ways. In the middle of this growing instability, Brianna Fraser and Roger Mackenzie step forward once again, but this time with even greater purpose. They understand something that others are only beginning to realize: that survival will depend not just on strength, but on preparation. Brianna's mind works ahead of the moment. She begins thinking in terms of structure, defense, reinforcement. She sees weaknesses in the ridge that others overlook and starts addressing them with quiet determination. Roger, on the other hand, focuses on connection, ensuring that no matter what happens, people can communicate, coordinate, and respond quickly. Together, they bring balance, strategy and structure, logic and leadership, and in doing so, they begin to fill the space that fear has created. But just as the ridge starts to adapt, to prepare, to hold itself together under pressure, the outside world pushes closer once again. This time, it is not just a warning, it is movement. Signs appear that cannot be ignored. Tracks, distant signals, small but clear indications that something is approaching. Not randomly, not without purpose, but with intention and direction. Jamie sees it immediately, and this time, he does not wait. He makes a decision that will define everything that comes next. A decision to move first, to step beyond defense and take control of the situation before it is too late. It is a risk, one that could either protect the ridge or lead the enemy straight to it. When he shares this plan, the reactions are mixed. Some see it as necessary, others see it as dangerous. But the truth is, there is no safe option left. Claire understands what this means even before he says it out loud.